Thanks for watching We Philosophy. Your thanks is much appreciated.
Chapter 1: Exploring the Subconscious.
Understanding the subconscious mind is essential to understanding emotion and using that emotion to your benefit. The subconscious mind has much to do with emotion, as emotion can seem primarily out of conscious control in the short term. Everyone has experienced this in some way. Just for whatever reason, you feel a certain way in a certain situation, and certain beliefs and feelings are felt inside. The feeling inside is the subconscious communicating to the conscious mind, and your beliefs are simply being shown back to you. Without awareness, emotions may appear to be uncontrollable, but they are not with applied mental practice in the field. By quite literally going out in your day-to-day life and applying conscious control of thought, you will slowly change every aspect of your life to the ideal if you make it so. The statement persisting in ideal beliefs will slowly but surely assume you live to your ideal may appear to be ridiculous at first. After all, if everyone could live ideally, why wouldn't they? The answer to this is that it is very difficult to live ideally, hence why most people never do so. To live ideally requires the individual to have complete awareness of their desires and learn over time to reduce their suffering. This will never be easy in the beginning stages of the journey, no matter what. I spoke to a friend regarding his pessimistic views of reality, and he couldn't accept the fact that he was creating his reality for himself the whole time and that he had the power to create his ideal. He said to me, even if your views expressed in this book, are correct, some people, like me, could never break my own negative subconscious habits. His statement was distressing as he was consciously limiting his own power. Belief creates reality, and this is literally so in this case. He, and many others, fall victim to conscious limitations of the self as they believe that they are fundamentally different in some way. This difference can be perceived to be many things, including illness to some degree. I am not saying that mental health disorders do not exist, and they certainly do in individuals who have experienced serious trauma, but I believe that in the modern age mental illness is exaggerated to a massive degree. Current understanding is that certain individuals seem to have predispositions to certain disorders, and certain levels of neurotransmitters can indicate these disorders. This is true and scientific as it can be observed consistently through brain-scan technology. However, this is a classic example of the what came first question: the chicken or the egg? The chicken and egg representing certain patterns of thinking and neurotransmitter levels in the brain. Does the individual really have depression caused by predisposition, or does the individual just continually think really bad thoughts, negatively conditioning the subconscious, causing the external? The former perception of mental illness is very delusional and disempowering as it only looks at external reality to diagnose. I fear that many, just like my friend, misperceive what a mental illness really is, and this perpetuates their suffering. Understand that you, the individual, are in control of your life. If you believe you cannot escape your suffering, this is the only reason why it is so. Understand that the subjective nature of perception of worldly events can transform the concrete facts of life into a blend of whatever the individual desires. I would like to repeat that life only appears to be primarily negative if awareness of the power of the conscious mind is not found within and ideal beliefs are not created within. The aim of this book is obviously to spread awareness of this ability that everyone has, but true awareness is consciously using the powers of the mind to consider all possibilities and pathways. This includes perception of events in reality and considering if your beliefs about yourself or others are an ideal interpretation of the events in your life. This very interpretation of reality is the self, and this explains the illusion of the self. You are who you believe you are and what traits you believe you have, and this is an indisputable fact. The subconscious mind makes this so. The default state that you, the individual, occupy is just a reflection of who you believe you are. This is known to be so as the past usually dictates everything that you would consider about yourself. This is a limiting belief, however, as the future and unseen methods of success sometimes exist that you couldn't consciously be aware of before. Thus, your sense of self should not be bound by the past and should instead be metaphysical. That is to see beyond the seeming confines of reality and create the ideal reality within first. Through a variety of known and unknown ways, the ideal will happen and no expense will come from the individual. You simply rise to the level of your desires, and they effortlessly manifest to you as you are not occupied with the world of appearances as much. This can be perceived as flow state or everything being added onto your life from a place of harmony. A great analogy to understand the reality of this concept calls back to superhero movies/fiction. I imagine a simple narrative that pits two vastly different characters against one another who have contrasting beliefs. In this story, an ancient and powerful artifact is the aim of the villain, and they desire to use this artifact to carry out their nefarious doings. The villain uses force to get what they want at the expense of others. The villain has a tragic backstory that grants some sympathy to them. The villain has a delusional but thoughtful plan to carry out that sounds good on paper but is perverse in reality. The villain uses authoritative force and control to accomplish things. The villain manipulates other people to serve him, and the villain views his own allies as disposable and tools meant to be used. In the end, the villain is defeated by his own plan. The hero is very different from the villain, and the hero is a bit of a fool who through fate ends up in an unexpected situation that causes him to grow. The hero is easygoing and he goes with the flow. He ends up meeting many different people on his journey that all help him in unexpected ways. The hero genuinely values these people as friends, and his friends all genuinely want to help him. The hero thwarts the villain solely for the reason that the villain is evil and a threat. I imagine a climatic scene near the finale where the villain finally discovers the ancient artifact just seconds before the hero and his team. The villain approaches the artifact with forceful resolve, but the artifact doesn't respond. The villain is infuriated and tries to use even more force to obtain the artifact, but the artifact is unresponsive. Then something magical seems to happen. The artifact, seeming to have a will of its own, flies straight toward the hero now being in his possession. The hero, being the man that he is, uses the all-powerful artifact to thwart the villain's plans and then returns the artifact to its resting place. This analogy is perfect to explain force versus flow in thought. The villain represents force, the hero represents flow, and the artifact represents any desire. When a desire is approached using force, what will manifest will not be harmonious. This is because inherently using force to seemingly achieve things in life is a negative application of the power of creation. The inverse and correct method to achieve is flow. Externally, it may be impossible to 100% determine if a particular action is forceful or flowing, as this is not something that is physically visible with light and depends on the individual. It can be felt inside by the individual if the particular action is force or flow, and this is obvious to the individual. Any action in which the desire inside isn't there is forceful, and flowing actions are achieved solely through the desire with little reasoning. In my imaginary story, the villain is a justifiable character who has been through a lot in his life. The audience can have sympathy for the villain, as it makes sense why he would end up that way. However, the villain's actions are not moral or correct, and the villain is certainly not in the right. The only flaws that the villain has is the persistence of negativity and hatred. The villain is just like every other human. It is just that their perception of the world is warped and individuals are not seen correctly in the villain's eyes. Contrast this to the hero, who has a complete opposite approach to life. The hero also had a rough childhood that was subject to suffering and misery. However, the hero perceives life differently and uses his prior suffering to create joy for himself. Through his suffering, the hero learned the importance of companionship and awoke inside him the desire to do good. This is how we should all strive to be regardless of our negative past experiences. Understand that there is no such thing as a negative event or a positive event inherently, as the variance is reliant on the perception of that event. A negative event can be good in the long run, as it may lead to positive change, while a positive event can be bad in the long run if it causes the individual to change negatively. Anyway, the hero ultimately gets the artifact, desire, in the long run, as he allowed fate to play out its course. The villain is defeated because obtention of desires at the expense of others will always defeat you in the long run. This is a law of the universe. All individuals who possess negativity in their soul are not giving themselves the love they desire inside their imagination. These individuals use the latent powers of imagination to generate negative and undesirable mental images for themselves involving people in their lives and themselves. Nobody can directly control what you are thinking, just as you cannot control what they are thinking, proving that your mental headspace is the ultimate safe space if you create it that way. With awareness that the mind works this way, the source of all suffering can be identified and can be flushed out the subconscious with emotional release, given you consciously allow the emotions to leave your consciousness. Flushing emotions out of your subconscious means that your default state is not aware of the emotions and will not respond to the emotions on a subconscious level. Every night when we go to sleep, our conscious mind is dissolved and the subconscious is allowed to rewrite the conscious mind based on how it perceived certain events in the day. This implies that just by existing as a human, the subconscious is always watching. This is why you cannot escape your thoughts and not take accountability for your actions, as the subconscious knows the truth always, and accountability must always be taken in some form. Some individuals have saturated their subconscious mind with so many negative imaginings and the corresponding beliefs that their very identity or sense of self involves this negativity, making it hard to shake off. Everyone has experienced this in some way if they have a belief that is negative in nature about themselves. There are extremes, and this explains most psychological conditions that are actually just people with a subconscious mind that is saturated with delusional beliefs and perceptions of the world. These conditions are not caused by any physical condition directly, as the perception of reality the individual holds is far stronger than any gene mutation. Mental illness should not be thought of as a conventional illness, as it is dependent solely on the individual to fix. These illnesses can also be treated in all by just the power of the individual. This makes treatment difficult, as no psychologist can actually reliably get in the subconscious mind of the patient and fix their beliefs to the ideal. All hypnotic techniques are simply methods of attempting to get access to the subconscious, but this does not work on aware individuals, and it is not an exact science. Regardless, it is up to the individual to make their own beliefs ideal. It is never another person's duty to do what you should do for yourself. It is also impossible for someone else to do something that you need to do yourself. God has made this so.